Daniel was the king's helper. Daniel was the king's friend. Daniel was God's friend too. Daniel talked to God every day. One day the king said, "Everybody stop praying. You must pray just to me. If you pray to God, I will put you where the lions are." Now Daniel heard what the king said. Daniel thought about the lions. Daniel said, "I will pray to God anyway." So Daniel went home. He went upstairs. He got down on his knees and he talked to God. The next day Daniel talked to God again. Soon the king's men came. They saw Daniel praying and they ran to tell the king. They said, "Daniel is talking to his God." "Oh my," said the king. He didn't want to put Daniel where the lions were. "Oh my," said the king. He was sad. He liked Daniel, but at last he said, "Daniel, your God will take care of you." So they put Daniel down into the lion's place. Everybody went home. The lions saw Daniel. The lions heard Daniel. The lions smelled Daniel. The lions didn't bite Daniel. Do you know why? Because God shut their mouths. In the morning, the king came running. "Oh, Daniel," he said, "was your God strong enough? Could he save you from the lions?" And Daniel said, "Yes, O king, my God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths. They haven't hurt me at all." Now the king was very happy. He said to his men, "Pull up Daniel out of the lion's place." So they pulled Daniel up out of the lion's place. They looked at his hands. They looked at his feet. The lions didn't even scratch him.
Hey, good morning. Ooh. Good music, though. We're glad that you're here today. Next week, we're going to do Noah's Ark. I should have done it this week. Y'all be prepared for that. It'll still be applicable next week. All right. My name's Nick. Thank you for joining us. Lindy had mentioned the connection cards. We really do value that connection with you. It's just a way that you can share information, what's going on with your life. So if you have something you want to say to us, that's a great way to do it. Or you can do it in person in real life and talk to people and stuff. But the cards work as well. So thanks for doing that. And again, welcome. Whether this is your first time here or your first time in a while or you're here all the time, we're glad to have you. Thanks for joining us. So we're doing this series called The Classics, where we take a children's version of the story that most of us have heard or heard part of or have some idea of and read the children's version, which, what a great job he did. But then we take a look at the actual scripture from the adult version of the Bible, and then we see what does that mean for us today? What can we learn in addition to what we already saw in the video, which does a really good job of kind of laying the groundwork of that particular story. But much like last week, it leaves a little bit out. There's a little bit more that we can garnish from reading the actual text. And so this is an Old Testament story, right? So that means it's the first 2/3-ish of the Bible is the Old Testament, and that's all the stuff before Jesus, right? God was there and he created the earth and Adam and Eve and all that stuff. That's all Old Testament stuff all the way up until the book of Matthew, which starts the New Testament, right? And the New Testament starts with the birth of Jesus and then everything after that, right? So we're in the Old Testament, which does a really good job of helping us understand the character of God, the nature of God, and the general relationship between humans and God, our creator, right? Now, there are some differences in the way that people interacted with the Lord at that time, and we can kind of look at some of that as well. Jesus really did kind of change things for us, which is good news, but that doesn't mean we just want to throw out all this stuff before him. There's some really valuable information here, and so we're going to take a look at that again. So like I said with Jonah last week, Jonah has a book of the Bible. Daniel has a book of the Bible. It's titled Daniel. It's written by Daniel, and it's about Daniel, right? You're keeping up. Good. All right, so if we look at the book of Daniel specifically, there's 12 chapters, and it's kind of divided in two. The first 6 are kind of life biographical stories of Daniel's life. And then the last 6 chapters, 7 through 12, are really more of prophecy, predicting the future, what's going to happen stuff. Believe it or not, this is from the first half. The story of Daniel and the lions is actually what happened. This is a factual story. There is nothing in the text that should indicate that this is a metaphor, that this didn't actually happen. We are to read this. I'm going to teach this as an event that happened in Daniel's life that he then wrote down and shared with people. Okay, so that's how we're treating this. But in order to get there, it would help us to know a little bit about what was going on and leading up to that place. So this is about 550 years before Jesus, right? So we've got a few different generations yet to come before Jesus shows up. And like I said, Daniel is given credit as the author. Now, if we were going to summarize the whole book of Daniel, it would really come down to this one main point. This particular phrase is used at least twice in the book of Daniel. This one's from 5:17, I think. The Most High God rules the kingdom of mankind. Okay, so if we were going to take the whole book of Daniel and say, what's the point? Why do we have this in the Bible? It's so that we can learn this, that God rules everything. The kingdom of God is above the kingdom of man, and God is the highest possible being. God is in control, God is on his throne, and we worship the Lord. That's what Daniel is saying throughout this whole book. But the specifics, here we go. Daniel in the lion's den. Now, the children's version, again, did a good job of telling us about that story. But how did we get there? Here's the blow by blow. Chapter 1 of Daniel. Daniel and his friends are taken captive by the Babylonians. Okay, so as we talked about, every time we look at the Old Testament, we probably have something to do with the Israelites being captive or taken into captivity or somehow oppressed, right? They're constantly in and out of throughout history of in and out of captivity, right? So Babylonians come along, Daniel and his friends get taken captive, but Daniel stays faithful. Now, this is under King Nebuchadnezzar. You probably heard of him. His name's thrown throughout history, right? So King Nebuchadnezzar is ruling Babylon, and they take Daniel and his friends. And even though they're imprisoned, even though they're in captivity, Daniel stays faithful and eventually starts gaining a little bit of status, starts being trusted a little bit more. So then chapter 2 comes along. King Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. Nobody can tell the king what his dream means. And they're like, wait, there's this one guy, he might know. So they go ask Daniel, what does this dream mean? And he's the only one in the whole kingdom who can figure it out. And he accurately interprets the dream. How is he able to do that? Because God told him, hey, here's what the king's dream means. And so when they came to ask him, he was able to do it. And he's like, oh, that totally makes sense. Good job, Daniel. We're going to trust you a little bit more. We're going to give you a little bit more status, a little bit more authority. So then we get chapter 3. King Nebuchadnezzar makes a golden image of himself and orders the entire kingdom to bow down and worship this statue. And then 3 other names that you probably have heard of if you've ever watched VeggieTales, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refuse to bow down and worship this idol of the king. The king gets mad, throws them into the furnace, but they don't burn up. And so King Nebuchadnezzar's like, whoa, that's cool. Maybe your God is the real deal. Everybody worship that God instead of me. All right, so King Nebuchadnezzar becomes a believer, and everything changes. That's great, that's great. Chapter 4, King Nebuchadnezzar praises God, but is soon removed from power. Chapter 5, King Belshazzar succeeds Nebuchadnezzar, throws a big old party, and then this hand appears and is writing on the wall. It's not attached to a person. It's just a hand, and it's writing on the wall. So have you ever heard the phrase, the writing on the wall? It's biblical, folks. We love all these phrases, right? We've got all these colloquialism, right? It comes from the Bible. Isn't that cool? So the writing on the wall, guess what? Who's the only one who can tell him what the writing means? Daniel. Oh, I thought you were going to get that one. Who's the one who knows what the writing means? Daniel, correct. So they call Daniel in and in front of the new king, right? Because he had gotten favor with the previous king, but then he was ousted, right? So the new king is like, oh, Daniel's my boy. This is great. Okay. So Daniel is made one of 3 rulers over the whole kingdom. So there's the actual king, King Belshazzar, right? But then he appoints 3 kind of like governor types, right? And so these 3 people, Daniel is one of them, ruling the whole kingdom. Even though he's one of the Israelites, even though he's from the land of Judah that is now being captive by Babylon, even though there's this new king who only just saw what Daniel can do, he's made one of the top 3 guys in the whole kingdom. Then King Belshazzar dies. The new king is Darius, which is a lot easier to say, by the way. So King Darius, at the end of chapter 5, is put into power, which brings us to chapter 6. Finally, right? The one we're actually going to talk about, Daniel in the lion's den. So we've got Daniel and these 2 other guys who are in charge of the whole place, the whole kingdom. And King Darius actually says, all right, this is too much for 3 guys to handle, so we're going to make you the managers and then give you a bunch of middle managers, right? Assistant to the regional managers, 120 of them. And Daniel and these other 2 guys are going to rule over those 120 who then will see over the actual people. So Daniel's got a lot of status, a lot of responsibility, and honestly, a little bit of power here, right? So naturally, he and these other 2 guys have a little bit of conflict. It's like the crabs in the bucket, right? You never want the other crab to get out. If they're going to start, you got to climb on, even if it's good for them, it's bad for you to stay in the bucket, right? So you pull them down, at least they're down there with you. So these other 2 guys are like, you know what? We got to dig up some dirt on Daniel. We're tired of this guy. We want the power. Forget him. He's an outsider. He's from Judah. We don't want him. They couldn't find anything. They couldn't find anything to hold against Daniel. They couldn't find any skeletons in his closet. They couldn't dig up any dirt. There was nothing they could blackmail him with. They said, but he's real faithful. If we could find a way to use his faith against him, then we'll be in business. Verse 5. Then these men said, we shall not find any ground for complaint against this Daniel, unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. See, they'd been paying attention. They knew that Daniel was a righteous man. They knew that he was faithful, that he followed all the rules, and he prayed 3 times a day, which was customary. Like, that was the standard, right? If you're going to follow God, you got to pray 3 times a day. And he was very religious about that. And so they knew, hey, if we can get his religion in conflict with his life, then we're going to have something to go on. So they wrote up this proclamation basically saying that there was going to be 30 days of worshiping the king, King Darius. Let's read it, verses 6 and 7. Then these high officials and satraps, the satraps were the 120 other guys, right? So they got the big 3, with Daniel being one of them. Then there's the 120 lowers, right? So all of them get together by agreement to the king and say to him, O King Darius, live forever. All the high officials of the kingdom, the prefects and the satraps, the counselors and the governors are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction that whoever makes petition to any god or man for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. All right, so step 1, butter him up. Oh, King Darius, we love you so much. You're the best. Never die, right? Kings didn't last very long in this time. We're on the 3rd king in one story here, right? So, hey, King Darius, you live forever. That's pretty high praise. Step number 2, lie and say that everyone's already on board with this. You just have to put your stamp of approval on it. And step number 3, make it impossible for the king to change his mind. How'd they do that? Verse 8, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document so that it cannot be changed according to the law of Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. So, of course, King Darius, what does he do? He signs it, right? How could this go wrong? They want to say how great I am, and they already all agree, and it's 30 days. That sounds pretty good. We'll throw a big party, and sign that off. I'd be a fool not to agree to this. And the trap is set. All these other guys have to do is wait and see what Daniel does. If he's really as faithful as they think he is, he's going to do all the work for him, right? The hard part's done. Signing the document, that's done. They made it so that the king couldn't even change it if he wanted to, right? All they got to do is wait for Daniel. Is he going to pray or is he not going to pray? Daniel hears about the law with no hesitation. He goes upstairs to pray. Keeps the faith. Just does what he's always done. Just does what he's always done. The other leaders are thrilled. They knew it. They knew that Daniel was so faithful, even a new law with the threat of death by lions couldn't dissuade him from praying. That's a pretty good reputation. What would my life look like if other people knew I was that committed to prayer? What would your life look like? What would your relationships with other people? What would your witness, when you say, hey, no, I do go to church, or hey, I do have faith in Jesus, what would that be like if people knew that you were so faithful and so committed to that even the lions couldn't tear you away from your prayers? That's Daniel. If that's what people can find to use against us, we're doing all right. So anyway, these guys go see King Darius. Hey, King, didn't you, I seem to remember, weren't you saying something about a new law, like don't pray to other people or something? Did you say something about that? And he goes, oh, well, yes, this wonderful proclamation, and no, it'll never be changed. Remember the law of the Persians, it shall not be altered and can never go back. Like, yes, this wonderful thing, everybody has to praise me for 30 days. Yeah, I thought you had said something about, that guy Daniel, though? I'm pretty sure he was praying today. We couldn't possibly be sure, but maybe you want to just ask him about it. That might kind of undermine your authority just a little bit. Remember, King Darius, live forever, you're the best, and all that stuff, right? But, one of the top 3 guys, you probably don't want him, directly defying your new law. That might cause problems. It's working out just like they had hoped. All right, let's catch up on the real text because, When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went up to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open towards Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he had done previously. Then these men came by and found Daniel making petition and plea before his God. Verse 12. Then they came near and said before the king concerning the injunction, O king, did you not sign an injunction that everyone who makes petition to any god or man within 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of the lions? The king answered and said, the thing stands fast according to the law of the Medes and the Persians and cannot be revoked. Verse 13, then they answered and said before the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, and the injunction you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. Now, King Darius, he's trapped. There's not a way out of this. They wrote the law in a way that says, hey, you can't change it. We're stuck with this for 30 days. He's got to hold up the law because even if he tries to back out of it, that's going to completely undermine his authority. if he just starts changing laws back and forth and disregarding the history and the way that things are supposed to go, he's on the chopping block, right? Remember, kings didn't last very long in this time. And so if he starts looking weak, if he starts looking wishy-washy, that's going to be an open door for somebody to come and take him out of power, kill him, send him away, and he's done. Now, he's pretty bummed about this. He's not thrilled that Daniel's going to get thrown to the lions, but he really, it's a him or me type situation, right? And King Darius is not about to be me, right? It's going to be him. Sorry, dude. Daniel, I wish you'd made a better choice. I feel kind of stuck in this, but this is the hand that we've been dealt, right? So he takes all day, tries to find a way out of it, but at the end of the day, it comes down to, this is the law, this is what I said, the word of the king has to stand. Too bad for you, Daniel. Verse 16. So then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. The king declared to Daniel, may your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you. Now that is a pretty bold statement. If Darius had a lot of faith, I don't think we would have ended up with the law that says you can't pray to the other God. You can only pray to me. That doesn't sound like a super strong believer to me, right? So just like Nebuchadnezzar, even though things are going well, even though we have a strong relationship with Daniel, Daniel's showing that God is real and he's interpreting the dreams and the hand on the wall and all of this stuff, right? Daniel's put in charge of everything, but it still comes down to, who's going to make me feel good? Who's going to give the king a little bit of extra status, right? So we have this law. He says, oh, Daniel, sorry about it, buddy. Maybe your God can come through for you. Verse 17, and a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den. The king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. The king went to his palace and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him. You see, God is real good. And God already knows the hearts of man and women. He knows that people are going to question the authenticity of this. So not only does he put it in Daniel's heart to keep the faith, to keep praying, to stand as an example among men, to be faithful no matter what the threat is against him, he puts it in the heart of the king to make sure that there's no doubt to this story. This was not just a verbal application. This wasn't just something the king decided one moment and said, hey, yeah, we're going to have 30 days. Everybody has to pray to me. Other people brought it to him. The 120 plus the 2 rulers all were witness to this law. The king had it written down and signed it. He didn't just declare it, but it says that he signed it, so there's official documentation of it. And then when they throw Daniel into the pit with the lions, he uses his official seal to block the stone so that nobody can say, oh, well, no, Daniel climbed up out of there, or, oh, somebody interfered with it, right? This is very similar to the Jesus in the tomb story, right? The stone that was so big nobody could move it, posting the Roman guards in front of it to make sure nobody could tamper with it, all of these things, right? And then despite that, the event still happened. Jesus still rose from the dead out of the tomb. Daniel is still saved from the lions. He comes out of there unscratched, unscathed. God is so good. He wants to show us, even in our human brains, even with our propensity to doubt, to mock, to find any possible way that this might not have been true. Like, surely this didn't really happen, but he leaves a paper trail for us to follow. Oh, that's good stuff. So the king seals it with his special signet ring, and he goes to bed, and no diversions were brought to him. You probably know what that means, right? All right, so Daniel, I hope this goes okay for you. Really don't see another way out of this unless your God can come through. closes the stone, seals it up, can't even sleep. First thing in the morning, verse 20. He came near to the den where Daniel was. He cried out in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, "Oh, Daniel, servant of the living God." Not guy who prays to someone that I don't know about. Not, kind of religious wacko who probably is just a crazy guy, but servant of the living God. Has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? Daniel 6:21. Then Daniel says to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths. They have not harmed me because I was found blameless before him, and also before you. O king, I have done no harm." Then the king was exceedingly glad, commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no harm was found on him because he had trusted in his God. Now, that's a pretty good story. Your faith in God, your relationship with God, directly affects the outcome of your life. Because no matter what the situation is, no matter what happens in your life, no matter what obstacle you come up against, your faith in God is paramount. That's more important than any other element. Even when the lions are there, it's your faith in God that matters more. Now, are there emergencies? Are there things that come against us? Does there water in the basement? Yes, all of these things are important and we have to deal with them, but never in exchange for my faith in God. Could the lions have very easily eaten Daniel? Yeah, of course. That's the point. If Daniel had been eaten by the lions, would this story have looked any different? Not for Daniel. Daniel's life was still faithful. It was still committed to God. It was still obedience, step by step, keeping the faith, praying his prayers, living his life for the Lord. Because of that, it didn't matter to Daniel whether he lived or died. What it mattered to was God. What benefited God the most? Daniel being saved. Daniel coming out of there with a testimony in front of all of these people with the official signet ring, seal, and everything that God had saved Daniel. Because that's where the children's story leaves off, right? Well, this verse is never going to make it into any children's book. Verse 24, the king commanded, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions. They, their children, and their wives, marry well, folks. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces. Sweet dreams. See, we got to skip that part. We can't do that. King Darius realized that he got played. He could no longer trust these other people. What's the penalty for not being able to trust your leaders? You're the king. You're in constant threat of being overthrown or killed. Off to the lions you go. Sorry, kids. Those other guys, we didn't have one bad thing. They couldn't find any dirt on Daniel. The only thing they could do was trick the king into making a law essentially against God. And what does Daniel do? He says, God is greater than my king. Now, he clearly is respectful of the king. He serves the king as faithfully as he can. He doesn't even seem to hold it against the king that he threw him into the lions, because the king comes in the morning. Hey, Daniel, how'd it go? Oh, king, live forever. I'm all right. I'm not sure that would have been my response. I'm a little too sarcastic and way too prideful to be like, hey, it's all right, no problem. It all worked out. Just throw me a rope, would you? Let's go have breakfast. I'm going to be a little hot that this guy threw me to the lions, right? But no, what does Daniel say? He keeps his faith to God, and he forgives the king. All he had to do was praise God. He never tried to defend himself. He never tried to say, well, you know what, really, king, I mean, we could probably come up with there's got to be a way out of this. He doesn't even try to talk his way out of it. Well, I'm trusting God. This is what's happening today. I trust God. All right, here we go. All he had to do was praise God and let the Lord do the work. So then King Darius issues a new proclamation. Verse 25. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth. Peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my royal dominion, people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and he rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions. Daniel's act of faith could have negatively impacted him. Right? We don't hear about family for Daniel or anything, right? He's not captured. It's Daniel and his friends are captured. Maybe there's a wife and kids. Maybe there's not, right? But we're looking at Daniel. Daniel gets thrown into the lion's den. Who does that really affect? Pretty much him. But when God saves him, who does that affect? All people in all nations with all languages that dwell upon the whole earth. God is greater than the lions. God is greater than our situation. God is greater than whatever we could possibly imagine our life being. Because God took this little victory, this faithfulness of one man, which is a big deal, right? But he took that relatively small incident in one guy's life and magnified it so that the whole world would be told about the faith of Daniel overcoming lions because of how good his God is. And now we will all worship that God. Not only that, but now we get to read about it 2,500 years later. And once again, we see that the king is proclaiming that all people, all places should have faith in this, the one true living God. Because he's bigger than lions. Daniel's faithfulness was on full display. He didn't need to prove anything to anybody because he had a real relationship with God. It wasn't about what the other people thought. It wasn't about, am I meeting the standard of man? Am I doing my job well, and does Jesus kind of fit into that? His relationship with God was overarching. Was he successful in work? Yeah, he got elevated to a really high position. But was that in place of faith or even equal to his faith? No. It was because of his faith. And when it became in conflict with his faith, what did he choose? He chose God. He chose to do what God wanted him. What was going to honor God? How was his life going to matter to the Lord most? Not to man, not to the king, not even to the kingdom of all of Babylon. But what did it mean for his relationship with the Lord? See, there's times that our life has conflict, obviously, right? That's kind of not a very bold statement, right? There's problems in life. There's things that come against us, right? We all get that, right? But there's also times that we have to make a choice between the government and our faith. Now, this is not one of those speeches where we're all going to become a cult and like the government can't come in and build the walls high. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Daniel did everything he could to honor the king. He was in captivity, but he served the king well. This was not his king. This was his overlord. This was his captor. This was his oppressor. But he served as well as he could. He served with the power of God in his life to the best of his ability, as long as it didn't conflict with his faith. The moment that the king tried to replace God in his life is the moment that Daniel took a stand. Now, he didn't make a big sign and go stand on the corner and yell at people as they drove past. He didn't start a Facebook page and say all kinds of nasty, mean comments on it. He didn't try to overthrow the government. He just lived his faithfulness as best he could and lived his government, his earthly life, as best as he could. But whenever there was a choice between the two, he always chose God. This is not what we see portrayed in life a lot of the time. The news, the media, certain people with authority will try to tell us that you can't be a Christian or that you can't do both, or that your Christian faith is fine. I mean, that's the best outcome we can hope for sometimes, right? Is that you can be a Christian, that's fine. Do that in the privacy of your own home, or you can do that on Sunday mornings, right? Unless you have to work Sunday, and then you can't, right? But we're constantly trying to be hushed and relegated to the sidelines. But the reality is, nobody can overcome faith in God except for your own self. Nobody can take that away from you. Our faith will be tested. It is tested. Thankfully, we live in a country that doesn't test us really that hard. It's political. It's social. Yes, I have not been murdered for my faith yet. And yet we have brothers and sisters around the world who that's a constant threat. The reality is, no one can take our faith from us. The question is, are we willing to live with a faith that's strong enough to even be noticed in the first place? Do you have to be angry all the time? No, please don't. That's not Christ-like. Are there times that are worth taking a stand? Most definitely. And I'm not talking about any one particular issue. I'm not talking about any one particular party or person or anything like that. What I'm talking about is our relationship with God has to be higher than anything else ever, no matter what that looks like, whether it's public or private. Our relationship has to be higher than that thing we don't want anybody to find out about, because we only do it when we're by ourselves, and, oh man, if anybody knew, I'd be ashamed. It has to be higher than that. Our relationship with God also has to be higher than our public life of, oh, look how good I am, or I'm doing so well at work, or even, woe is me, my life is so hard, I'm never going to see the end of this. Whatever it is, our relationship with God should be building a faith that overcomes all of those things. So that when we are questioned, when there is something that comes against us, it's not just the faith of my grandma. Oh, yeah, we're Christians because, well, this is a Christian nation, don't you know? No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a real relationship that even when tested with a den of lions, stands firm. That's my hope for you, for me, for our kids across the street, for our town, for our country, for our whole wide world, that faith in God would overcome everything else. Because even when our faith is used against us, it's about our faith in God. Even then, God can be glorified. Even when our faith is portrayed as a weakness, as a fault, as stupidity, that can be a way that we can glorify God. The whole kingdom can be shown what God can do in your life if you're willing to keep the faith one day at a time, one decision at a time. So when we have that opportunity to share our faith, to talk about what Jesus is doing in our life, to demonstrating how important my relationship with God really is, how I wouldn't be who I am, and I couldn't even go on without my faith. Telling your story, praying no matter what. That's when we have the opportunity to build our faith, to share our faith, so that God can continue to grow in us and through us and help other people see, even when they're trying to use it against us, to see a real life of faith. I want to pray for that right now. Would you pray with me? Lord, I pray for boldness. I pray for courage. I pray with a little bit of trepidation for opportunities for faith. Lord, I know that when I pray for an opportunity for faith, that often means I'm going to need faith to get through something. But Lord, without you, I couldn't get through anything. And so I pray that we can all have the boldness and the courage to live faithfully. Now, I recognize, God, that there's some people who don't really buy off on that. And that's it's not really okay, but I understand that they're at that place. Lord, I pray for them to experience you in a real way, whether that's through this message, through your word, through our music, or just through a conversation with someone who has faith, that they can share that and buy into that themselves, Lord. I know that there's no government proclamation that can say, oh, we're all Christians now, or oh, we're all believers now, and that's not what this is about, Lord. I pray that individually that we can come together with faith, that we can grow individually, grow in our families, grow in our faith church community, in our Russell community, in our state, Lord, that can just be who we are, that we are yours and we trust you more than anything else, more than any situation, more than any proclamation, more than anything that might come against us, or even things that look like opportunities that we can be excited about but might distract us from you, Lord. I pray that you just keep us honed in on you, precisely who you are and what you mean to us, Lord. And Daniel didn't know Jesus, but Lord, we do. And I pray that our faith in the Son of God will be strong enough to overcome any obstacle in our life. I thank you, Lord, for sending your Son so that we can have a real relationship with you, that we don't have to be prophetic, that we don't have to have a miracle, that we don't have to be thrown to the lions to see the person of God, but instead we have the Son of God who lived as an example for us and the Holy Spirit sent to us afterwards, that we can live in conjunction with you, Lord. And I just pray that your mighty hand be upon each of our lives so that we can continue to grow towards you no matter what our starting place looks like, that we can see you and be moving towards you on our faith journey. And I pray that whoever it is that needs to take that step, that needs to open their hearts up just a little bit to the idea that God might be real, that he might actually be good, that he actually does love us, that they would experience you in a way that is convincing, not just like making a choice between left and right or good or bad, but instead knowing that you are real and that you love them, Lord. And I pray that they would open themselves to a journey of faith, that no matter what the starting point looks like, that it's one step towards you in every possible moment. God, we thank you for the moisture, but if you could quit just a little to dry us out, that'd be all right. But we have faith that even if the rain never stops, we're going to talk about that next week, but even if the rain never stops, Lord, that we would continue to have faith. Even when people come against us and say, you weaklings, you small-minded Christians, you hypocrites, you fools, that we would still have faith in you. It's because of Jesus, it's through Jesus, and it's to Jesus I pray. Amen.